I'm Dr. Gutman. I'm an emergency physician, retired fire EMS and medical director. I grew up in a fire department. My dad was a firefighter and a medic. And so actually one of my first baby pictures is me in the front seat of an engine during a January 1st New Year's Eve fire outside of Detroit where I grew up. And I'm covered in ash, which sure made my mother thrilled.
It was kind of a baptism by fire.
Literally. I've been doing it since '87 professionally.
Detroit had a lot of fires back in the day.
I still like to set fire to things, just as a hobby.
Okay, so going from the front seat of a fire engine, where'd you go after that? How'd you get into being a physician, or were you an EMT and a paramedic? And then
Yeah, I became an EMT in '87, and sort of followed. I became an EMTI, an instructor, firefighter, and then went to PA school. I was PA for a while. Then in medical school, did that, and through the years did medical direction and a couple of fellowships in University of Cincinnati, did a fellowship in pre-hospital care, and then ED ICU fellowship later in life. And now I still work night shifts in the emergency department all over, but I do primarily critical access in rural hospitals now because it takes somebody who's got a little gray in their hair.
Yes,
I
there's
was
some
definitely
great,
assessing.
yes.
I'm all about, hair and makeup and all that.
For somebody who's thinking about going to med school or PA school, they've been an EMT or a paramedic, what advice would you give them?
It is the best training you're going to have. I see a lot of the new grads coming out who literally have nothing but school. They've gone to school from, college, high school, all the things. And they have no practical experience. And they have a lot of knowledge and no idea how to apply it. And so it is every day of your career. And I taught on this morning. It was a talk on, okay, I've got a degree, now what? And how to maximize all your experiences. So, hey, this is what I like, what I don't like. And you come out of med school and go into med school or nursing school, whatever you do, just so much better because you know the practical aspects.
Yeah, I know that some medical schools are requiring an EMT certification for that very reason.
It can be actually either required or some of them actually have it as an elective, like become an EMT while you're in your didactic program, which I think is amazing.
For multiple reasons, because there's a lot of EMS physicians who have never been on an ambulance and don't think it should be allowed, but they didn't ask me.
No, didn't run that by. It's always interesting because people who don't grow up in it find their way to it.
Yes.
I grew up in it. It's interesting because my son, he's 16. He grew up in a fire department EMS. So when they would have touch a truck, he's like, fine, whatever. Completely bored. And he has no interest in it, which is brave because he found other things that he likes, but he needed to have that exposure. I can't imagine being an EMS physician without. But it also probably makes them better in the emergency department because if you don't understand how difficult it is to put an IV in, racing down a highway and bumping, maybe you're a little bit less critical of the people who are doing everything you're supposed to do, but with no equipment in the back of an ambulance going 90 miles an hour.
Yeah, upside down in a ditch.
Upside down, yeah, often.
That old patient, the cliche.
I know.
So what are you doing now? You said you're doing some critical access stuff.
I'm a local physician primarily. I still work at a large hospital in Orlando. That's where I am now. But I work all over the country as critical access. My last medical direction job was actually, I ran EMS for the Bermuda, the British Overseas Territory.
Really?
I loved it.
Oh, how fun.
It was. And it was sort of the pinnacle of what I'd hoped for in my career. And I come to EMS conferences, again, all over the country. I enjoy teaching. And then I run a private company during the day called Tough Love MD, which essentially is, let's just say it helps instill personal responsibility into people. Like I always tell people, whatever happened to your life may not be your fault, but it is your responsibility. And that's, I give a little tough love.
Really?
Yeah.
What's it called again?
Tough Love MD.
Wow.
Right?
So it's those things that maybe our parents tried to teach us, but we were stubborn and didn't learn?
Did your mother have a spoon?
She didn't have a spoon.
Or a flip-flop?
No, she didn't need that.
Oh.
But did you?
My parents did. Let's just say it was the 70s. Everyone had a spoon.
Capital punishment was encouraged?
Oh, absolutely, yes. My mother-in-law, Soul, had I think she had a spatula, which she offered when we got married, just in case. But it is personal responsibility sometimes has to be taught.
Who's your typical client?
So I actually work a lot in the metabolic health field, and my typical clients are people who are interested in leadership. So I recently got a book published. I'm very excited, but essentially it's taking the principles of emergency medicine and critical care, and then my experience as a C-suite leader, essentially building your resiliency up from the cellular level. And so it's really nice. Companies will hire me and teach us how to be better leaders, but from building from the cell up. And I use the principles that you learn in the back of the ambulance and say, oh, how do we apply that to being a good leader? And a lot of it comes down to the first pulse you always take in a crisis is, and what seems very instinctive to you and I is not to a lot of people. And so that's what companies pay me to do that. And, like, read my book and I will teach you how to be a good leader on the cellular level.
Well, that sounds fascinating. What's the name of the book?
It's called Lead Your Life Like a Resuscitation.
I
Powerhouse
love
Living. Now available on Amazon.
We'll put the link in the show
Oh,
notes.
that's wonderful. Yeah, it's a practical book. There's a lot of swearing because it tells tales from pre-hospital care and emergency medicine. And if you don't think you can learn how to run a team by learning how to run a resuscitation, you are not a leader.
Can you give us an example of something like a case study or a story?
Let me give you an example that I learned. One of my absolute favorite mentors when I was in residency at LSU, her name is Dr. Lori Greer, brilliant. She would come into resuscitation. There'd be like 50 people in the room, and she's about my height, 5'1". She would sit on the trash can in the corner and not say a word, just rocking her feet back and forth. She didn't have to say words. You knew every single person in that room, all different departments, trauma, anesthesia. You know how what trauma works. She would have their eye on everyone. She would everything happening in that room and never raised her voice. Yes, she would raise her voice. It was become something was happening. She's like, no, let's stop it. I learned more how to be a leader by watching her forward of looking like doing nothing and being nonchalant. But that woman had her finger on everything in the room, like, she's running that room. She's not saying a word. She's running it.
How did she establish that culture?
She established it by walking in the room being 10 foot tall and bulletproof at 5'1". She was so good at her job, you didn't question her. And everyone in that room, again, keep in mind, surgical residents, surgical attendants, anesthesia, cath scan, all the different specialties walked in that room with a man. Oh, she carried herself like that. And so you learn that. It's not just holding a clipboard. It's not just having the captain's bars. It's how you walk into the room and everything. It's to know that you're in charge and they can rely upon you. You can't teach it. You have to sort of, oh, I get it.
So how does a new paramedic who struggles with assertiveness going into a call where there's 4 to 6 people 10 to 15 years older than you who have, they look at you like you're still wet behind the ears. How do you establish that?
You establish it by being better every day. If you walk in the room thinking you're 10 foot tall and bulletproof and you're not, you're going to get beaten down very quickly. If you walk in that room and you're like, I got this, and if anything is wrong and you can't fix it, you're never going to be able to walk into that room. A good leader acknowledges that everyone in that team has a contribution and everyone should be there. And if you shouldn't be there, get out. And you have to be in you full enough to be able to acknowledge the fact that, no, it's my room, get out. Or it's my room, let's contribute. And that's how I end every code. If it happens to be unsuccessful, we don't win all the time. It's not TV. Everyone in that room, I thought, okay, anyone have anything to add? Did I miss anything?
Yeah, I love it when doctors ask that during code.
Absolutely.
Am I forgetting anything? They look around and everybody says, hey, did you consider this? Oh, no, thank you. We're a team. We rotate around the patient.
Right.
And if it's all about ego, it doesn't work.
Absolutely. And I have a no ego at this point. You can get that airway, great, you do that. I can't, fine, whatever. And everyone contributes. And it makes people, especially when you do lose someone, like, okay, we did everything. I want everyone to understand we did everything.
Yeah.
That's being a leader. I didn't win in the code, but I won in that room.
Sure.
And you establish it. You carry that.
Yeah. something that I teach my students, two things. One is the Superman or Wonder Woman pose. Our posture determines our state, right?
Yes.
If you walk in like a turtle, like, oh, I'm going to save your life, it's not going to work.
Nope.
But if you go in there and, you head back kind of posture, they'll treat you like you look, right?
Absolutely. And I'm 5'1", so everyone tends to have to look down a little bit. So I often am on a step stool. doing
Literally?
something, literally, and a
Wow.
step stool in the room, because I always tell people, that we're near the end of code when I put the ultrasound away, I put everything away, and I start doing compressions, because that's how I think. I grew up in the back of the box, and if I start doing compressions, I'm like, I am trying desperately to think of something I did not do, and I need a step stool for that.
Yeah. One of the things I've learned in all of my years in EMS is something from Jack Canfield, Chicken Soup for the Soul, E plus R equals O.
Absolutely.
Have you heard of this?
Absolutely.
So for the audience, I'll share what it is. E plus R equals O. It means event plus response equals an outcome. And what happens is there's an event happening. Somebody cuts you off in traffic, right? There's a response. You flip them off.
Yeah.
And now there's kind of this road rage incident. And then there's an outcome. But the thing about it is in EMS, something happened. Somebody got shot. They got stabbed. They got in a car wreck. We can't change that event.
Yeah.
We respond. We may or may not be able to choose our response. We do the best we can, and it may or may not affect the outcome.
Absolutely. And we hope that it positively affects the outcome, but we got to keep in mind sometimes it negatively affects that outcome too.
True. That's a good point. Well, Dr. Gutman,
Yes.
Is there anything else that you would like to share?
Like I said, the class this morning, it was great. I had people who had been in EMS at the end of their career, and we had EMG students.
Yeah.
Every day you should learn something. If you think you cannot learn anything, that is the day you need to pull back and do something different. Every day you should learn something, and I encourage people to always have a hobby outside of EMS and fire.
Yes.
Have friends outside of EMS and fire. And make sure you hug your family every day, because in our job, we know better than anyone else that you start out the day fine and happy. You may not end the day that way. So hug your family.
That's a great advice. There's no guarantee for tomorrow.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
thank you so much for stopping
you,
by. We
Seda.
really appreciate it.
Thank you.